Hello, everyone. This is Ashutosh Sinha. And pick your cup of coffee or tea and let's take a thought break. For the next few minutes on this show, on this weekend show, as I call it, we'll step off the treadmill of the work and life which you're in and focus on resetting your compass and finding your true north, hopefully. Today on the show, I have Mr. John Kivel. John is someone who has had a very interesting career. He actually started off from his home base in US in Boston and moved countries and continents to, very early in his career, to move to India to head recruiting and talent acquisition for some very large organizations. And guess what? Now he has been in China for the last, almost 7 or 8 years. And John can correct me as I pass it to him.
No, yeah.
And 9 years, John?
About 8 years, yeah, about 8 years.
8 years, yeah. And he's been, obviously in the middle of all the action where it started off from in the good way and the bad way. But the important thing is that he knows exactly where and how the business has been. And more importantly, he's probably met a lot of people who've been through these times, unprecedented disruption which happened to business and lives. Yeah. So John, very warm welcome to you. So good to see you again.
Great to see you. It's been many, many years, but we've known each other for almost 20 years. So it's a nice reunion for sure.
Absolutely. So John, what do you think about the disruption this whole scenario has caused? And you pretty much where it all started off. So what have you seen, and how have you seen careers move or change because of this impact?
Sure. Well, Ashu, first, thank you for inviting me here. I really appreciate it. And congratulations, not only on your book, which doesn't surprise me, it's amazing, but also just on your career. I think you've always been an inspiration for a lot of people. So congratulations on that. And I wish you all the best with its continued launch here. And yeah, I do sit in sort of a unique place in the world right now. Here, I'm based here in Shanghai, in China. And it's been an interesting journey here. I think if you were to speak to me, right around January 20th or so, right when things were starting to happen with COVID, and this was the only place that really had any signs or signals of things going on in Wuhan, China, right? And then obviously some cases in other cities, and then cases here in Shanghai. At that point, it really was isolated to China, and to be perfectly honest with you, I thought what was going on around me was quite draconian, to be honest with you. Temperatures being checked outside, and you weren't allowed into restaurants or bars if they were even open anymore without filling out some paperwork and then getting a temperature check and then a range of other things. And then your movements got more limited and limited and limited. And if I think about how strange that was, and how, like I said, how I believed it was just so draconian, and if I fast forward to now, where I'm sitting in Shanghai, which ironically is probably one of the only places in the world that is so open right now, with zero cases of COVID, free movements outside, barely anybody's wearing masks anymore. You can go in and out of restaurants and bars, and they're all open, and everything is back to normal. Same with gyms and everything else. So if I think back to that, I think, wow, that was interesting to witness what happened and judge it so severely, and now watch the rest of the world go through it. It's been humbling to say the least, right? It's been absolutely humbling. I think when you think about the impact that it's had, at least where I sit, here in Asia, quite similar to many other places. There's industries that have been massively impacted. Of course, your travel and your entertainment industries and your food and beverage industries and your hospitality have been incredibly damaged. Some places, obviously, like everywhere else, have closed, never to reopen again. companies have also closed, right? As you and I both work in the same type of industry and doing recruiting as I do here in Asia, it's been a tense time for a lot of people. It really has. I work in healthcare. I work for GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceuticals. I do consider myself somewhat fortunate because it's an industry that was in some ways less impacted by what happened. But there are pockets of my industry as well within life sciences and biopharma, particularly when you get into places like medical devices. A lot of medical devices are elective surgeries, right? Those are things that have suffered a lot because any elective procedures right now are certainly taking a back seat to what's happening, obviously, with COVID around the world. I think what I've seen from candidates, what I've seen from my teams across the region, I think is a real sense of humility that this has caused, which is, and you and I have both worked in very fast-paced markets, India, China, the rest of Asia, the Middle East and Africa, and we're used to lots of hiring and continued growth. And with that, I think becomes behaviors from candidates that they're perceived that they're really wanted, and there's always a job out there, and there's always a job that pays more money, and we're always scared everybody in our company's going to be leaving because there's more jobs out there. And I sense now there's, like I said, a humility around it where people are grateful for what they have, and I think it's actually been a real pause for people to say, wow, I'm happy that my direct deposit still happens every single month. And that's really good. So people are so concerned about their growth. People are still concerned about their happiness in their jobs. But I think that probably much like our parents' generation and generations before them that have gone through major crises, I think this is the one that probably has grounded us a little bit to say, I don't need a promotion every year, and I don't need to be called senior vice president of my cubicle because that's what I'm used to in terms of titles. I'm happy that I have a job and I work with interesting people and I learn some things. I'm hearing a lot of that, and I think that's actually been really interesting. Actually, really interesting. The other side of it, which is fascinating too, is, and this is just speaks a bit just to, I think, about cultures, is there was an interesting shift of blame in the whole COVID situation, where I remember back in January there was a lot of resentment against Chinese nationals, even abroad, right, which was fascinating. And then and sitting here in China, it was interesting to listen to. And then as I was here in China as a foreigner, once COVID was under control in the rest of the world, there was actually a lot of resentment and animosity towards me as a foreigner in China, because the rest of the world had COVID now. So people in China were saying, well, you're a foreigner, so we're going to treat you different because we believe that you could also have COVID. So it was a really interesting spiral, both socially, economically, in the job market, and then just personally. So it was a fascinating experience. Fascinating. Yeah.
That's a great commentary, John. And in fact, the fact that human behaviors change so quickly and swiftly to the environment around them is very, very interesting. Whether it's related to job, how you look at it, your life, or just each other. I mean, it's very, very fascinating. You, John, have been, in my lens, the way I've always viewed your career, you're truly a global leader of HR and talent acquisition for a long time. I mean, you have, you're one of the few people I know who has a US view, India subcontinent view, and a Southeast Asia and China view. So it's like, wow, you're like, I would say like a 290-degree view almost. And, from that perspective, one thing I've been looking at, people, when they used to lose job, because it's suddenly become that scenario where there are more people for the same job versus the other way around. Even leaders and mid-level leaders, they suddenly don't have enough choices to go out, because earlier, you could shift from one country to another country or one city to another city, and that is suddenly a level playing field. It's become a plateau. And, across all countries, it's probably the same level of job. So do you see really things coming back? I mean, I keep hearing that hiring will kick off again, and there's so many pings I'm sure you get on LinkedIn, and it feels bad for people who are out of job, but at the same time the people in job are also feeling insecure. So when do you see the hiring meter or the hiring equity coming back in the same way?
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's something that I obviously think about every day, and have discussions about every day. I think at this point, there is not going to be an event that triggers everybody to wake up. We've all read enough and know enough about how vaccines work that even if they come out with 1 or 5 vaccines tomorrow, there will be a lag in when people are vaccinated, right? Although that may give people a bit more security knowing there is a vaccine out there. With that, I do think that there is an exhaustion around the world. I could speak for the part of the world that I represent here, but I think around the world with what's happening and how detrimental the impact on the economy has been to people, right? And I think because of that, I actually don't feel like we're too far off, and whether that's a quarter away or 2 quarters away, from things picking back up again, because there is so much bent up demand. It's, planes that were getting old 8 months ago are only older now and still need to be replaced. Big, heavy machinery still needs to be purchased. People still do need, much like I was saying around even some of the elective type healthcare services, people still do need those. Even though it's elective, it's life-changing. If you need a new knee and you've needed one for 8 months and you've had to wait, you still need a new knee and you probably are in more pain now. So I think that there's a point where people are beginning to get their hands around what this pandemic is and how it affects them personally, and then we'll be able to make choices, more knowledgeable choices now than maybe they would have made 3 or 6 months ago. But I'm not necessarily confident that it's going to be sort of a V going up, or maybe more of a U. But I'm really confident that 2021, we're going to see that pent up demand coming into fruition, and hiring picking up for sure. I think that I just don't think it could wait too much longer. I really don't. The way it happens and what we're hiring for and how we're hiring, that may change, right? That may change. I think that this concept of working from home has been a real shakeup for the entire planet, right? With the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we spend on office space every year, it's got to be a little bit of a head scratcher to say, wow, do I really need an office that I spend $300,000 a month in this beautiful area to seat 1,500 people when actually they all just worked from home for 7 months and did it pretty well. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one to see how that pans out. But my guess is too, because just naturally the way leases are structured and things like that, I don't think they're all going to be empty soon, but I think it'll be an interesting evolution to see how that transforms over time.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you're so right in that. As you're saying that, it just struck me that, you have, you're obviously working with a healthcare organization, right? And typically, one would like to believe that world has changed for, let's say, traditional business setups, like the jobs in retail, the jobs in manufacturing, and they're going to probably not dwindle, but probably the demand would be slightly lesser. And the future careers are more in robotics or AI or healthcare or biotech or sustainability. And what's your advice to folks out there who are looking to shift the career, or who are really stuck against a wall and they want to say that it could be for 2 reasons. One, because of the current scenario where they're actually stuck because of they lost a job or something wrong happened. Second could be, or the business shut down. Or second could be, they are people who are still enjoying their journey as a career, but they're not enjoying their job as a job, and they're totally kind of bored out of what they're doing, and it's kind of building on the salary because it comes in the bank. That's it. So what's your
Yeah.
advice for people who want to change to a second career? And I think this is applicable, John, very valuable when
Sure.
you advise, because if I look at different quadrants, people who are in their early 30s, they look at it differently, coming out of
Sure.
college, early career, and people who are in the 40s are looking for a second career maybe. So is there a possibility?
Yeah.
And is there anything like that at all, or do you still think it's a level playing field?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question. You're right; it is different for different quadrants. I think that career shifts within a career and occupation mean different things for different people. But I do think that to be prepared, that sometimes actually, even as I've made career shifts or adjustments to my career, I've always thought about it sort of like a pool shot. And when you're playing billiards, you typically aren't looking just at that one shot. You say, okay, I need to land the ball somewhere else. So the next shot is actually the really key one. For me, I always thought about things like that, which is it might take 2 shots to get there, particularly if you're doing a big adjustment in your career. And that's why I think oftentimes you see people, they maybe worked somewhere for 5 or 6 years. They bounce somewhere else. They last 9 months and go somewhere else. It's very,
That's a
very
really
common,
good one.
right?
That's
It
such a good
happens.
analogy. Yeah.
Right. You just if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at my profile, took me 2 or 3 shots a couple times, right? I think the key to it is actually being aware of that may happen, and not waiting too long to make the adjustment. I think we've seen a shift in the last 10 years of long sustained careers, maybe similar to our parents, are a little different now, right? I actually don't feel like, not that there isn't great congratulatory and merit to be said for working somewhere for 25 years, but I also don't look at 2 candidates that differently anymore, that this person worked there for 25 years and this person worked at 3 different companies in 7 years. I really don't, even if one of those was just for a minute. So I always think about it, and I would prepare people for potentially 2 moves, and that's okay. To say, okay, maybe 1 move is actually just getting you into a different industry. Or maybe 1 move is getting you into a different job that you're doing within your same industry. And maybe you feel it out and maybe you actually don't like it, or maybe you would like a piece of it, but maybe not in that place. It's perfectly okay. So I actually think those 2 shots are actually, there's merit in looking at it like that. The other thing too is, as you were talking about both in the career that I have had and that you have had, try to think about the things that will separate you from the pack, right? If I'm a recruitment leader, my goal in my career has always been, so you could line me up against 10 people who do my same job, but I have a unique set of skills that go along with that, very much like you. You've done it in multiple countries. You've done it in a couple different industries, because I think that global perspective and that cultural intelligence that's my separator, right? I don't think I'm actually better or worse than a lot of folks out there in my job, but I probably have a bit of an edge because I do put a lot of care and thought into how culturally intelligent I am, which also helps me get things done in unique places. So I think too, when you think about that, maybe just sort of 2 shots is maybe what it takes, and then figure out what's your separator amongst a group of 10 people doing your job. Why are you different? I think that may level set people a little bit.
That's actually completely true, and I think it's so valid right now. So that's great advice for people. I just hope 10,000 people right now listen to your advice, because that's such a good piece of advice. And that is the differentiator. One is broadening experience. Second is making sure that you're doing it while the sun is still shining. And third is really, to your point, is it's okay to take a couple of shots to pocket the ball, right? So it's quite okay. So it's awesome you said the way you put it. I loved it. That's the best one I've heard for a long time. John, slightly different question, and getting a little bit of philosophical side of careers and life. I've seen people hesitate a lot to step out of the comfort zone, right? Well, it's what you said was very logical, and that's the right thing to do. But people often tread very carefully in trying something new, experimenting something new.
Sure.
And as age and experience catches up, it becomes even more harder because you are carrying a family, you're carrying maybe aged parents and mortgages and whatever. So it becomes even harder to experiment and change. Any quick tips on that? Because what you said is very logical, but how can one really do that? How can one make the transition?
Yeah, absolutely. In your book, you talk about sort of a Bermuda Triangle effect, right? And that couldn't be any more true right now, except it's not really a triangle. It's more like a quadrangle, because we got COVID to play in there as well. So you have all of these forces, right? You have family and you have children. You have a pandemic. You have the job you may hate or the boss you may hate. But I think actually, to be honest with you, I think a lot of us, I would say the majority of us, we also work because we need to. And I think it's actually, there's no shame in admitting that, right? I think actually a lot of people at times, they don't actually admit that. Actually, I do this because I actually do need to feed my children. And I do like getting onto a plane and going to beaches. And I do like earning money so I could give it to people who need it more than me. Whatever reason is, I think there is merit in taking that into consideration, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to bankrupt yourself for a lofty, lovely idea. And I think there's actually real merit in planning that move to say, actually, I'm feeling like I'm trapped right now. Actually, can I be trapped? My father, many years ago, I came to my dad, and this was about 15 years ago, and I said, "Hey, Dad, I would love to do this volunteer thing in Africa. It sounds really, really amazing." And I was talking all about it. His reaction, he was repulsed. I said, "It's a volunteer thing." He said, "Do you know how much debt you have right now? Your bills come to my house, John." He said, are you crazy? And it was a good wake-up call to say, as altruistic as I would like to think I am, I'm not Warren Buffett's child, and I don't have those same the same ability to do that. So I think there is an awareness of saying, okay, I've made a decision that I want to do something different. Now, am I in a position to do that? If not, when can I do that and set that goal? Maybe it's 18 months out. I need one more bonus or two more bonuses, right? You and I, Ashu, shared a boss in Austin Cook for many years. And Austin Cook said to me, I don't know why I still remember this. He said, "You're always going to need about 6 months salary. Just in case you're going to need to bail somewhere and do something different." Now,
that's a golden rule.
Yeah, right. There's no set number. You can do that, fantastic. But you know what? Everybody knows their own expenses. But I actually think put thought into: are you ready for this, personally, financially, and then set a timeline and dive in and do it. If you don't do it, you will regret it forever. There's no doubt about that. If I had waited longer in my career, and I think I actually did wait a while before I actually took the move and moved to India. I think I was in my, maybe mid 30s or early 30s. And then I meet people now who are traveling the world and working in different places at 24, 25, way ahead of me, right? So I would set some parameters around what makes sense for you. And I would absolutely dive in and do it. And it could be anything. I've known people too, even in some of my friend group now, that they're doing amazing jobs, and then you don't see them for 8 or 9 months, and you say amazing, they work in a corporation, you think that they're very successful, and all of a sudden their world has shifted, and their dream was to roast coffee beans and do something really interesting with coffee that wasn't done yet. And I give folks so much credit for that. I think that is, to me, absolutely inspirational. And some of them stick with it, but yet some of them actually might not stick with it, but they might actually just pivot a little bit away from that and do something a little bit different. But I think they're doing what they want to do, but they've all prepared for it. So I think preparing for it's the most important thing. But don't wait too long to pull the trigger on it. Plan it, prepare for it, and just do it. But don't go bankrupt doing it.
Very practical advice, and I couldn't agree more with you. And I think you're right in saying don't wait forever for doing it. Plan fast and do it. So
Absolutely.
that's awesome. Let me put you on the spot, John. What are you doing?
Sure.
How's your passion going? You've had a great career. Obviously, you've been if you go on LinkedIn, someone see John Kivel, head of talent acquisition or HR for such a large organization based in one of the most wanted place in the world, from where economy is moving fast and growing, at least where it has been before business was hit. But what's your personal passion? How are you crossing the bridge yourself? Any stories there?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And just as you and I have been discussing your book, it just continues to ring true to me that everything in your book happens to everyone. So that's the reality of it. It happens to everybody. I don't know anybody who's actually gone through a period of probably more than 5 or 8 years doing the same thing where you don't have that moment where you scratch your head and say, actually, is this right? Or is this the right environment for that? For me, I think I've had a good run by keeping myself working and focusing on interesting markets. The markets really get me, the different cultures in different countries. That keeps me invigorated. So I feel like that as an underlying foundation. I've always driven my career by location, which is fascinating. It's not a usual way to do it, but I always thought about location. Where do I want to be physically? And then I will put my skills to work in that place. But I will be very honest with you that probably over the last 2 or 3 years, the job itself has become a little bit different. And there are times where I say to myself, well, I'm sitting in this meeting and I feel like I've been in this meeting 400 times, the same exact meeting. I know
happens to me too.
Yeah, exactly. I know how it's going to end. I know just what's going to happen. And that's not me being arrogant. It's me being just reflective on, wow, I'm getting a little edgy. I'm getting a little jumpy. So for me, I've always had a passion for travel. I've always had a passion for interesting projects and creating things. And real estate was something that I was always interested in. So I dove in and started a side project and built a real estate development company over the last 1.5 years or so. Do it on the weekends, do it at night. It's something I was really passionate about. I've always loved traveling to Indonesia. I found the people there warm and accepting, and there's a great group of people doing very similar things to what I'm doing in a little bit of a different spirit. And that has really helped. And for a while I thought, man, can I do that? And of course I can do that. Why wouldn't I be able to do that? Why wouldn't my company allow me to do that? Of course they would allow me to do that, as long as it's not interrupting my job. So I made that move, and it's a career shift, but it's almost like a career +1, which has been.
What is your success mantra, John?
I think for me, when I notice exactly my point around, I've been in this meeting 300 times. I don't wait until I say that 5,000 times. I wait till I say that twice, and I do something about it. Really, really rewarding so far. Yeah. So as I was saying, I think it's, as I've gotten a little bit older, I think one of the regrets that I've had is that I probably didn't spend enough time when I was a bit younger on my own sort of self-awareness. And I think as I've gotten older, I've become really aware of how I feel and not questioning whether it's right or wrong, but just saying, oh, this is how I feel. My point around sort of sitting in a meeting and saying to yourself, I've been here so many times and I'm not inspired by this anymore, is something I probably waited too long to recognize and do something about. So I think, my mantra as it relates to my career is, we should not be shy to act on things. Our feelings are generally the ones that are sort of mind and soul are steering us in a direction. I have so many colleagues, so many friends who Monday morning comes, I know exactly what they're going to say. Tuesday comes, I know what they're going to say. By Thursday, they want Friday. By Friday, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that the weekend is here. And they've really gained nothing intellectually stimulating out of that entire week because they really just thought about ending the week fast. And they've done that for 52, 60, 75 weeks in a row. So for me, I think as I've gotten a little bit older, once I start down that path of getting a little bit itchy, I do something about it. Now, it doesn't necessarily always mean to me that, oh my God, I need to do something different with my career that day. It could also just be a little glitch in the system. Maybe I'll try a different exercise routine. Maybe I'll check myself to make sure I'm sleeping enough. All these things that we don't think a lot about, but I think actually particularly during this pandemic, I think people are becoming more aware. The impact of stress on your life, the ability to sort of take a step back and say, I feel a certain way, why do I feel like that? So it's a bit, and I hate to sound sort of too philosophical, but a lot of self-actualization on being really conscious of how I feel and doing something about it. I probably didn't do that for a solid 15 years. You and I both, Ashu, have worked for many multinational companies. The beauty of that is you work for great organizations that do really cool stuff. The downside of that is, particularly sitting in this part of the world, we spend an incredible amount of time, and most of that in our evening times when we could be spending that with family and friends on conference calls till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Really only struck me about 2 years ago where I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it at a regularity that is acceptable for me. And I've always been very anxious to do that, right? So I think I really listened to myself. And my twist on that was I was getting so irritated by those calls. And then when I started declining them or requesting a different time or saying, I can do this, but I can't do another one for another month, and everyone's saying, oh, no problem at all, I realized, wow, I'm sorry that I waited 15 years to actually speak up. And that change alone, just getting some evenings back for me, was a really big one, right? So I think it's the speed at which we listen to ourselves. It's been a mantra of mine, particularly over the last few years here, where I've listened to really what my mind is saying and actually took action rather than waiting until I get too frustrated. Yeah.
John, that's immense, actually. And I said earlier, I just hope not 10,000, but 50,000 people hear this view. I mean, this is the moment, right? The fact is that when you truly listen to yourself, and if it's too late for you listening to yourself, or you listen to yourself in time. And I think you said it so beautifully, the other thing, that a lot of times we just hesitate to ask, we just hesitate to even check on another person that, hey, and if you respect your own time, others, that it's cardinal, right? People start respecting your time. So we, out of courtesy, out of diplomacy, out of sheer professionalism, actually, I feel sometimes, or the ability to not be a block in someone's plan, we just keep going the way with, and destroying our time and our personal time, which actually, on the contrary, a lot of people don't realize. And when you're saying that, it was striking me that at a point of time in my life, it hit me very hard that when you give away your personal time, it starts affecting your professional value and what you deliver back, right? Because your brain is kind of chewed up, right, beyond a point of time. So thanks for bringing that up. So so John, I think it'll be immense if these things get over, and we can get on a flight and some other time soon, and get off a cup of coffee or a glass of beer for ourselves. But thank you so much for being on the show.
You're most welcome.
I believe there was some very valuable conversation. Outputs are going to go out there, and I hope people can make the most out of it. So thank you so much again.
No, thank you, Ashu. I'm so super happy for you. I think that I was so delighted to see that this book is coming out, and now that I've learned more about it and read it, it's just fascinating, and it's so very you. As you know, I used to call you the doctor many years ago, and now I know why, right? now I know why. you've been looking at things very differently from a very unique perspective for a long time. And I think being able to put that in and those thoughts down, I think are really valuable for a lot of people. So, so thank you. Thank you for including me in this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thank you. That's